Olá, Tiago Faria, tiagofaria.pt, e este é o episódio número 26 do podcast do Tiago. Eu peço desculpa pela ausência, já não estava a fazer este podcast há umas 2 ou 3 semanas, meteu-se o período de férias, as pessoas recusaram os convites, e eu, entretanto, também comecei a fazer vários projetos e fiquei um pouquinho sem tempo, mas agora estamos de volta, e eu trago uma convidada que eu vou ter muito prazer em falar com. Ela chama-se Julia Arndt. Ela trabalhou comigo, eu não a conheci pessoalmente, mas ela trabalhou comigo ao mesmo tempo na Google. Tivemos 8 anos exatamente no mesmo prédio, e eu infelizmente não a vi tantas vezes porque o escritório é gigantesco. Mas aqui estamos. Ela tornou-se agora uma empreendedora, está a lançar um mega projeto e vamos falar mesmo sobre isso. E especializa-se basicamente em gerir o stress para quem trabalha nestas empresas. Hello, Julia. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Hello, I'm super excited to be here today. Thank you so much for having me.
So cool. We made it. It's been in the making for the past 2, 3, 4 weeks. I don't know. But it's happening. Welcome.
It's happening, yes. And it's so beautiful to hear you speak in Portuguese, and I have no idea what you said. But you know, I'm gonna get some Google translation or
Don't
something.
Don't worry. It was all good things. It's gonna be
I'm sure it was.
So I always started by asking you, most people in Portugal maybe unfortunately don't know who you are, but could you tell us who you are, what you do?
Yeah, of course. My name is Julia Arndt. You said that very correctly and very well pronounced. And I'm originally from Germany. I grew up in Germany for the first 18, 19 years of my life. And then over the last 12 years, I've been living out of my hometown and then also abroad. So I studied I have a bachelor in international management, and I studied half of that time in Germany and then half of the time in France. So I lived in France for 3 years in total, completing my bachelor degree, doing my master's degree in marketing and brand management, and went over to Sydney to do an internship and worked a little bit in England, and then started to work for Google in Dublin, all over the place. Lots of different places and cities over the last 12 years. But I started at Google in Dublin, and we kind of started around the same time and also ended at the same time, which is very funny.
At the same time. Great.
But I was in Dublin for 3 years, and I've been living in the US now for the last 5 years. So as I just mentioned, I left Google in February 2019 this year and started my own company in stress management. My company is called Blue Mountain Mindfulness, and and I've been an entrepreneur ever since for the last 7-8 months. It's been a very exciting journey, and I'm very excited to share more with you about it.
And you've been documenting it all. I love it. People should really watch your channel because you're going through all the challenges and ups and downs every month, right? It's really, really cool what you're doing. But we'll go through the details in a bit. Before all that, I love to go very much back.
Yeah, let's go back
to the very beginning. Who was baby Julia? What was, not baby, okay, a child Julia. What was she dreaming to become? What was in your mind when you were a kid? Could you just please if you remember anything?
Yeah. Great question. I had to think about that for a second.
Contextualize a bit.
First time. Yeah. Who was Julia when I was little? I would say I was very ambitious. I've always been very ambitious. I think I learned really early in life that in order to be successful, I have to work very hard for it. I have a bigger sister. She's 2 years older than me, and she was always a bit my inspiration. She was very smart in school and always brought home really good grades. And she didn't really had to do very much for it. She was just a very smart person. And so I kind of went into school with the same attitude, but it didn't work so well for me. The first 1 or 2 years when I started go into gymnasium, which is, kind of from 10 to 18 years old. And so I learned that, I didn't bring home the best grades initially, and that really frustrated me. And so that's kind of where I think I created that spirit of I want, in order to get results and get what I want, I need to work for it. I need to work really hard for it. I need to do it. So I think I developed this really ambitious worker style very early on in my life. I had a lot of small jobs besides school ever since I was small. Like I think I started, carrying out newspapers when I was like 12 or 13 years old. I worked as a waitress in different restaurants and bars and clubs growing up. I worked always a lot in different kind of ways, making money, but also growing myself as a human being. And the last thing that I'm going to say to this question is I always wanted to become a teacher. My family are all teachers. My dad is a teacher. My grandparents were both teachers. My uncle and aunt are teachers. So I have a very strong family of teachers, and I never really thought about doing anything else. So when I was 18, 19 years old and had to decide of what I want to do in life, I said, of course, I'm going to become a teacher. I'm going to do sports and probably French or English, some type of language, because I was always really fascinated by speaking different languages. And my dad said no. He never said no to anything in my life. He was always really, really supportive of me with whatever I did. And he had a really cool style of, like upbringing and education. Everyone that always hears that I had a teacher as a father always assumes that they are really strict and very hard on you, but it was the complete opposite. No. But with that one thing, he was like, I don't want you to become a teacher. There's more for you out there. He, as you can tell, probably by his feedback, he doesn't love his job. And he said, I'm too smart to become a teacher and I should do something different. So I was like, okay, I have no idea what else I want to do. And I always wanted to combine kind of the languages. So I started to learn about international studies and international programs where you can do half of your program in German, and in my, of course, in my case, German and English, and then even add a third language. And so I really, really enjoyed that idea. So initially I thought I'm going to do international tourism management. I wanted to go into like hotels and bars because that's kind of, where I had some experience. And the school that I applied for needed or wanted you to do like a 12-week internship in a hotel before starting, to really show that you're really interested in that area. And so I did, and I hated it. I worked in a hotel for a couple of weeks, and I was like, that's not what I want to do. And that's kind of why I moved into the international management direction and said, I don't really know in which direction I want to go just yet, but I know that I want to do something an international study and management. Yeah. So that's kind of a long answer to your question.
Very good. You went through all the stages of your life. But in the end, you ended up actually being a teacher now, in a way. You're teaching people through this channel, your YouTube channel, and through your amazing courses and everything. So it all ended up matching very well. You're doing a business while teaching.
Exactly. And I love that. I love that combination. And it's exactly what you say. It's my passion to teach and educate people. And it's so funny how it all came back around, right?
No, and you're really good at conveying your message. You really put it through in your videos. It's really, really good. You're good at it.
Thank you.
So you graduated in international management, and then you decided to start, according to your LinkedIn, I'm not sure if it's super accurate, but you started your career at Volkswagen as an intern, right?
So I did that in between my studies. So my program was set up in a way that it was 1.5 years of studying, and then we had to do a 6-month internship. That's where I went to Volkswagen in Germany, and then I moved to France. Did 1.5 years there.
Before that, how was the 6 months? How was the experience working in a huge company, right?
Yeah, it was great. It was really exciting. It was in Germany, and I worked for Volkswagen brand.
Which city? Sorry, which city was it?
Volkswagen is in Wolfsburg, which is the headquarter of the Volkswagen brand, the Volkswagen brand. But I worked for the Volkswagen Group, so I worked for all of the different brands that Volkswagen has to offer. So Volkswagen, Audi, Bugatti, Lamborghini, all these different brands for the fleet. So we worked with big customers that were purchasing their fleets through Volkswagen Group.
Uh-huh.
And that office was located a little bit like 30 minutes outside of Wolfsburg in a small town called Braunschweig.
Nice name.
Yeah. And what I did there was sales and marketing. And so I supported a little bit the account managers in putting together big calls for requests, or like big quotes that they put together for big clients, like Pfizer, for example. And I helped our marketing manager back then organize an international manager event in Prague. Which was really, really exciting. Obviously, I traveled to Prague a few times to help her set up the conference. I went to a 5-star hotel, I think, for the first time in my life, and stayed in an intercontinental. It was a very exciting time. Really great internship and really, really cool experience.
And what do you think was the most valuable lesson in those 6 months that you absorbed, and you were able to use it the years later?
I think I really found my passion for project management. I really liked kind of having kind of this event where, we knew what we wanted to do, and then we broke it up into different little pieces. And then we got there, we kind of created this whole project in a fairly short period of time. And I think, and I love cars as well. So kind of combining this, and I think it's funny, but I feel like when you're German, you're growing up with like, all of these cool car brands and the passion a little bit for that. So so that was really a cool experience. Volkswagen, I think, is a pretty conservative company now. Obviously I've worked in the tech world. It's very interesting to have that comparison, which it was something that I wasn't super aware of, obviously, with my first experience.
Yeah, it's all you knew.
But now, kind of looking back at it, I'm like, that was probably something that wasn't so attractive for me.
You learned what you wouldn't like to do more. Yeah. That's awesome. And then you decided to move first to France, right? How did that? What did you decide by yourself? Was it someone that inspired you? Someone talked to you about it? You had some connections?
Great question. So it was part of the program. So the program that I went through at university had basically different partner universities in different countries, in England and France, in the US and Spain, and Turkey, I think, as well. And I have a part of my family lives in France. I'm not French, but my dad's cousin lives in France. So we always had family in the south of France. We visited them. French was my second language because I had family there. And I always had the aspiration to actually be able to communicate with them, because we saw them a few times kind of while I was growing up, but we never really had the chance to really talk to them. And so I knew that with having my English already at a really good level, I was like, I want to improve my second language. And I know that I'm only going to do that if I live in a country and I use the language. So it was a no-brainer for me to go to France. And then it was also, I lived in the south of France. I lived in Marseille for 3 years. It's a very beautiful place. So it was very easy from the rain in Germany, because I lived in a very rainy city that has around 300 days of rain per year, to moving to the sunshine and 300 days of sunshine. So
I know the feeling now that I came back from Dublin to hear.
I feel like I've been going through these ebbs and flows, right? I lived in like a very rainy city in Germany. It's called Bremen. It's really close to Hamburg. And then I moved to Marseille, which was really sunny. And then I moved to Dublin, which was very rainy for 3 years. And now I live in California. And so I have kind of these ups and downs of living in rainy places and in sunny places.
Amazing. Well, you had then a mix of experiences in event management and logistics, and then the big G arrived. You started basically at the same time, almost, 2011, right? So almost the same year at least. How I remember the feeling. I was like in the enchantment phase, and I was like, wow, people actually work at Google. Like, it's not just like some website where you go. There's like a lot of things happening. Were you also like enchanted, and it was an incredible?
Definitely. Yeah, I was definitely enchanted. I think so first of all, I never really thought about working for Google. Like I had actually a co-student that I studied with in France that started to work for Google like 6 months prior, and he reached out to me on LinkedIn and was like, hey, I saw that you just I just saw that you are doing your master's degree in marketing, and we're looking for people with a marketing background with different language skills in our Google headquarters. And I'm like, okay, what? Like, I'm like, I went to literally on Google and looked at what Google was doing and how they're making their money. I think a lot of people, maybe more and more now are aware of it, but back then
nobody had an idea.
Nobody had an idea. And then I went through the whole process of interviewing, and they invited me to Dublin, and it was very special. My family was very excited. I think my mom had booked her first flight and visit to Dublin before I had booked my first flight.
That exciting.
So that was really fun. And I remember it being a very smooth and nice transition from university, because I felt like I was still at university, because there were so many young people.
Especially
right?
before the induction period was like a month. You never started working. It's like incredible experience.
Yeah. So very international, multicultural, which I loved. That was always my big passion. So getting there and meeting so many smart, inspiring people, so many people that have done already so many incredible things in their life, was really, really cool.
In fact, it's so international that I make this question usually to people that work there in Dublin. Do you have any Irish friend that you're still in touch?
Yeah,
you do?
I actually just interviewed him for my podcast, because he was my manager.
Okay.
And he is Irish.
But it's very rare, right? We just it's so international that you just hang out with those guys because it's the same situation.
It is true. It's more my manager, or my old manager, and then I have a really good friend of mine. She's German as well, and she just married an Irish guy. So I think because of her, maybe we were a little bit more in touch with kind of the Irish community.
Not just Guinness.
Not just Guinness,
So that's awesome. And then 8 years, right? You quickly progressed into the senior project manager role. That was incredible. And what do you think were the main takeaways of those 8 years, both in Dublin and in the US, for you? The main takeaways. Like, imagine you're 65 years old and you're looking back at 8 years at Google. What did you say to people that ask?
I mean, that it was an incredible experience, for sure. That I'm extremely grateful that I've had this experience. That it shaped me into the person that I am today. Of course, I learned a lot of different skills. I was able to learn a lot at work, like project management and how to manage people, how to coach people, how to mentor people. Like, I found my passion in that as well while I was at Google. But I also did a lot of things on the side, and I feel very grateful that Google always gave us the opportunity to also develop ourselves besides work, and they always invested in ourselves, and that was really, I think that's just incredible. And also, I traveled a lot with Google. I went to see so many different places. Just the overall experience at Google has been really incredible, and I will be forever grateful for these 8 years.
Completely true. Completely true. But then there's the other side that we have to talk about.
Yes, let's talk about the other side.
It's all amazing, everyone loves to be there. Work hard, play hard. But then at what point did you realize that, the career was not going exactly the path you wanted, and you started to feel a bit more anxiety working on, and you eventually you even got through a burnout. It's like you say it publicly that you really felt. At what point did you felt that things started changing in your mind?
I think there's a lot of things that happened, and that kind of happened at the same time, and lots of changes in my life, personally, professionally. I moved to Mountain View. That's 5 years ago.
After 3 years in Dublin,
After almost 3 years in Dublin, exactly. And I had a new job. I had a new team. The first year was incredible. And then I broke up with a partner, like the second year, so like kind of like heartache, a little bit, which, personal things going on, of course, for all of us. And then I got on boarded to a really big global project that I was kind of really quickly taking a lot of responsibility on, and then finally took the lead on. And what else happened? And I started to fall in love with Lake Tahoe, where I live now. And I think that was one of the biggest very positive things in my life that changed, but that put a lot of pressure on me at the same time. So Lake Tahoe is a 4-hour commute away from Mountain View. It's around 400 kilometers. And I started to come here. I really enjoy nature. It's basically in the mountains. There's a huge lake here, and it's very, very beautiful. And and I just totally fell in love with this place, and I felt really home, which I had never felt before over the 8 to 10 years that I had traveled across the world and had lived in so many amazing places. But then I came to Tahoe, and I was like, it's just hard to explain. It was just a feeling. And because of my time at Google, I had accumulated some savings, and I always thought about investing into real estate. So I bought a little house that I'm currently sitting in.
Nice.
Here in Lake Tahoe, and that's kind of when all of the craziness started to happen. So I had this huge project at work. I bought this house, and I started to commuting on a weekly basis between here and Mountain View. So I would leave Sunday night. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I would leave Sunday night here from Lake Tahoe, go back to the Bay Area, work for 4 days in the office, and then would drive home Thursday nights, work Fridays from home, and then kind of do this. And I did that for 3 years. So that was a long period of time. I traveled, 3,600 kilometers on a monthly basis by myself in the car. And then on top of kind of that commuting stress, I also had a lot of stuff going on at work, of course, right? It's always pressure, always new projects, timelines, deadlines. So I would say when I started to kind of fall in love with Tahoe, that was the time when I also started to think about, and that's 3 years ago, where I started to think about, is Google what I really want? Mm-hmm. Like, is the job fulfilling me? Am I still learning new things? Do I have enough impact? Do I really follow my passion? Like all of these different questions. And then, and that, how it is, right? There's always these like bursts of things. Like for 2 months, maybe you have these thoughts on your mind, but then you get kind of sucked in back into day-to-day life and into maybe a new exciting project. And then you're happy again for a certain period of time. And then those doubts or thoughts come up again. So I would say it took like kind of 3 years for me, where I was always like, what would I do if I would leave? Do I find a role at Google that really fulfills me and something that I really want to do? Or is there something else out there? Is there something that is closer to now where I want to kind of start creating my life? That fits better into what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So I'd say it was a long period of time that I had like, oh yeah, maybe or maybe not, or actually I really enjoy it and there's all these benefits and it's really great and it's an amazing company and everybody loves it. The brand identity is extremely strong. Obviously, like, I lived here in Lake Tahoe, and everyone I told that I worked for Google was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And like you get always this perspective. Feedback. And you're like, oh yeah, no, I can't think what I'm kind of thinking right now. So I kind of always push that thought a little bit away. And at the same time, I also looked for different opportunities. I started to look for remote opportunities within the company because I really wanted to
stay in Lake Tahoe.
Stay in Lake Tahoe. That was kind of my biggest struggle, because I loved it so much here, and I wasn't a huge fan of the Bay Area, and then I met my fiance here as well, so I built kind of my whole network in Tahoe. And then my jobs got crazier, and I got some tough feedback from leaders, and moved into a different organization, and there were always these ups and downs, very stressful periods of time. But then I was always like, I can do this. I always had this, like I told you, I was always this really ambitious person. I always knew that I just had to work hard for whatever I wanted to get to. And I think that's kind of what led me to last year in August 2018, where I was diagnosed with burnout and anxiety. And different factors that led to that, like I said, personal challenges, professional challenges, always wanting to be the best and always wanting to bring my best into all of the different areas in my life. I wanted to excel at work, and I wanted to have big impact, but I also wanted to be here, and I wanted to spend time with my
quality of life,
my boyfriend, and with my family and my friends here. And I felt at some point that I wasn't there anymore. I felt like I wasn't really present anymore in my job. I felt like I wasn't never really present while I was here, because I always had these thoughts around, what am I doing? I'm not really happy with this anymore. I was trying to look at all these different roles, talk to a lot of different teams about working remotely, but nobody really offered me that chance. And then at the same time, I was looking at roles here in or like organizations and companies more in the area, but
not much.
There was nothing that was interesting. So I was a little stuck
in a limbo.
At the same time, I was very overwhelmed and stressed out. And I didn't realize it for a very long time, until one day I was like, I feel like I'm not myself anymore, and I need to take a step back. So I went to the doctor. They gave me a health questionnaire and asked me to fill out a couple of questions. And I was very, very surprised about how often I had to say, they ask you like, how often do you feel like this way? Or how often do you have trouble sleeping? And how often do you feel like you can't focus? And I think like 95% of the questions I answered with like the highest, the highest thing that you can say, like, I don't know what it was, like every day, or like, multiple times a day. And I like, that was kind of my big realization, right? I was like, wow, okay. I wasn't aware that now looking at that on a piece of paper and seeing how maybe bad it is, I was not aware of. And then obviously talking to the doctor and hearing from the doctor saying that I have burnout and anxiety was a really big eye-opener.
Wow. That's really incredible what you went through. And but at some point, after all that turmoil, what was the catalyst for you to decide not to do anything else but start your own business?
So I went on a medical leave for 3 months.
You had a lot of time to think.
So I had a lot of time to think, which was very good, because I felt like I didn't have time to think anymore. And I am I'm a very strict defender of medication. I don't like medication. Obviously, here in the US, they offered me anti-anxiety and antidepressants and sleeping aid, and I was like, no, if my body is trying to tell me there's something going on, I don't want to just numb the feeling and keep going what I'm doing, because it's not healthy. So those 3 months were very powerful, and I thought they were very scary at first. I feel like my anxiety.
Did you feel fear about what others would be thinking at work, or did it come to your mind?
Absolutely.
You did.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. I felt really guilty. I felt really ashamed and uncomfortable. I didn't have to share what was going on with me. I just handed in my medical leave, basically. But I was like, oh my God, what are other people thinking about me? I'm leaving my team. I'm leaving my project for such a long period of time. So that was really stressful, and I think that kind of added to my initial anxiety, even though I was on a medical leave.
How did
but
you
then it gave me time.
It gave you time.
Then it gave me time. I just spent time for myself. I went out in nature. I went on a hiking trip for a week by myself in the mountains, and really, really started to think about what am I doing? What is really important for me? And I started to learn a lot about anxiety and burnout and depression and stress management, because I was always a very active and healthy person. I was very health conscious. People knew me at Google as like the health and fitness guru. They would always see Julia in the gym. And I would always, give people advice on how they should eat well and be well. And then this happened to me, and I was like, this is so weird. Like, I always thought I was this really healthy person. What had happened? Well, I had started to skip on all these kind of healthy things partly. But then I also wasn't aware that mental health is such an important piece and topic as well, so that was really exciting for me to kind of dive into that topic and learn more about. So that really empowered me, and that obviously gave me kind of a spark of inspiration to help people. So I went back to my job in December last year, and I was very uncomfortable, and I felt really guilty. And at the same time, I felt like I need to help other people, because I feel like I'm probably not the only person that is going through this, but nobody talks about it. There's still this stigma around, burnout, and people maybe don't really understand what it means. And mental health is always like, oh, are you crazy? Like those kind of things. So I came back, and I pretty quickly, just sat down and wrote an email to a couple of internal teams, or not internal teams, internal groups, sharing my story, being pretty honest and upfront about what had happened to me, and offering to share my learnings in the stress management training with others. And
it had a lot of traction.
And in 2 or 3 days, I had almost 300 emails in my inbox.
Whoa!
From people.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's incredible, because and people, I had no idea also of that, but silently, a lot of people are suffering.
A lot of people.
Like, don't share it. But then when a person like you shows up, it's like, oh my God, please tell me what to do. Right?
It was really powerful, and for me, it was like, wow, this is crazy. I want to help people, and I've always had this passion for people and for teaching, and so I offered a stress management training, and for the first training, I had around 100 people that showed up, and that for me was like, there was still no way for me to work remotely, and I knew I would need to go back to that commute, which I really dreaded at the end. And then I had found all of a sudden this passion. I always had on my mind, like, maybe I do my own company, but I was always like, in what? Like, what would I do? And then it just kind of came to me through this really hardship, and through this experience, and through all of the challenges, but also learnings that I made through that gave me a lot of power.
It's a powerful thing, absolutely.
And so I was like, okay, there's so many people that are interested. I should start a podcast, because I have way more things to share than I can in a 1 hour training. And then for me, it was like, okay, I went back to work, and I started back the commute, and I started to be back being alone during the week. And I was like, this is just not what I want anymore. And here's a really incredible opportunity to help people. And there's probably not just people at Google that are feeling stressed out and burnt out, but also in other, in any other areas, in other companies, and other
So you found basically your first few customers were like from those recommendations and connections you made initially.
It was definitely through my network that I started. Obviously I have a very strong network at Google, but also Googlers that left the company and now work for Facebook or for LinkedIn, all these other big giant companies, right? And like even when I left, I shared my story pretty openly about why I was leaving. Yeah, you mentioned that, and I, like, for me that was important, because I wanted people to know that that there is people have like mental health issues, and burnout is a real thing, and it can happen to anyone, even if you think you're healthy, and if you're doing everything for your physical well-being. The mental part is also really important. So the mind of what am I triggered by? Why am I constantly thinking these negative thoughts and feelings? Where does it come from? So I left, and then started building my business.
Fascinating. It's a really incredible story. But I'd love to know, like, because my audience is like business owners, entrepreneurs. I'd love to know how also what were the main mistakes you feel that happened in those first few months? I know it's very recent. I'm still making mistakes, but
I'm still making mistakes. Yeah.
What were the main mistakes you feel that happened that turned out to be amazing lessons, and now this is the way to go, right?
Yeah. I mean, I jumped right in. Sometimes I'm like, maybe I should have taken a week or two of vacation.
Ambitious as you are?
Huh?
Ambitious as you are, you would.
Ambitious as I was, and as many ideas as I had as well at that point, right? Like I was so inspired and so passionate. I was like, I want to do it all at the same time.
Podcast, YouTube.
Exactly. That was my biggest challenge, because I had so many ideas, and to kind of bring it down and to say, okay, what do I need to prioritize? Where do I need to focus my energy? I can't do everything at the same time. That's been really challenging over the last few months, and I'm still struggling with that, honestly. Like, I still have a lot of ideas and a lot of things and a lot of projects I want to do, and I need to really be strict with myself and take a step back and be like, okay, what is the next smart move to do? But other than that, like, I wouldn't say there were big mistakes that turned into big lessons or something. But yeah, small things kind of along the way, right?
Of course.
Like how to use your network, how to connect with people, how to negotiate with people. Sometimes, especially at the beginning, I felt like I was jumping into these things, and then afterwards I was like, oh, maybe I should have negotiated that better, But yeah, all part of the process and all really exciting.
Absolutely. And you basically, everything I defend in my channel that I create, like the content creation, I always push this button and really put it on top of mind. But you have a really amazing content strategy, doing everywhere, basically trying to be everywhere as much as you can. But did you find that content would be the way to go since day one? Like, you knew, okay, I have to do this consistently for long periods of time. You knew that already, right?
Yes, that's kind of what I really walked into. Like, I had obviously followed a lot of other people and a lot of other coaches, and just people that inspired me, and looked at their content strategy. And I always knew that if you kind of want to make it in the digital world, you need to be consistent.
Yes.
For me, that's like the biggest piece. I really sat down. I actually have that paper right here. And I wrote down, okay, how many posts in the year do I want to make? How many YouTube videos do I want to release? How many podcasts do I want to release? I was really strict with myself, but also with my strategy around how often do I want to post. It doesn't mean you have to post every day. It doesn't mean you have to be on Instagram 24/7, but you need to be there.
Your own rhythm as much as you can within your own rhythm.
Yeah. And I'm, it's been 8 or 9 months in, and I haven't, have not posted once to when I'm planning to post, because it's really important for me, and that's really what I'm prioritizing. I really believe in sharing as much information as I can freely. I think I want to reach as many people as possible, because I think there's still too much stigma around burnout. I think there's too much stigma around mental health, and people don't realize how important it is and how detrimental it can be for us if we're not taking care of it. So I want to help as many people as possible, which is why I have the podcast and I have the YouTube channel. And then Instagram is kind of the add-on, because, because Instagram is Instagram and it's important to be there. So yeah, and I'm, I would consider myself as a creative person. I never considered myself as a creative person while I was at Google, really. Yes. But I really enjoyed kind of being so, being able to do what I want and create. Like that's been really fascinating and exciting for me to do my own things and to work with a designer on, different posts and my logo and my brand and all these different things. So, yeah.
That's a beautiful, beautiful story. And what do you think? So after those 8 years of being surrounded by advertising and all this kind of online digital thing with Google, based on your experience at Google, anything that helped you to grow your business online? Any learnings that you were able to bring from Google that?
Oh, yeah, many. Definitely many. We are obviously very aware of kind of the online advertising space and what's possible and what's not possible. I just recently set up my Google My Business listing, so people can find me and they can start leaving ratings there as well. There's definitely a lot of those kind of things that I've learned, just how do you feel comfortable just to kind of approach your online advertising strategy? How do you set up your website? What kind of information needs to be on there? Obviously I think I learned a lot through Google, because the first 3 years I was an account manager and I probably talked to 1,000 advertisers and I saw 1,000 different websites. So you learn a lot in that process, right? You learn what
From the
works well,
best
what
in the
doesn't
world,
work
the
so
best
well.
companies in the world work with you.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really powerful. And I think that just that confidence as well, I mean, I talk to so many business owners and starters, or even people that have been in the business a long time, and they don't know what Google is or what paid advertising is versus organic search results, and what is a Google My Business account versus Google Ads. Like I still have these conversations with people, and I feel very what's the right word? I feel really, humbled by being able to have that knowledge and being able to share it with other people, also from an online advertising perspective and setting up a business perspective.
Absolutely, I really feel the same. You're in really a beautiful mission. I really admire it, because I know so many friends that are going through that, and you being able to give it through these channels. I mean, you're going to grow for sure, because you're giving it all for free. You're giving the knowledge. You're sharing that this is an important topic, and people should not be ashamed of it. Or it's really incredible what you're doing. But why do you think it is so common, especially in these larger companies?
Yeah.
I have a feeling, like I said, that people don't share it. They suffer silently. Don't even realize it. Like you didn't realize it right at first. Something's wrong. But I'm not.
For a very long time. Yeah. Up until I went to the doctor, I didn't really know what was going on. I would say that everybody suffers stress. I don't think it's just the big giants. It's just the big organizations. I think everybody that works, everybody that has a life has stress, because that's just what stress is. We need stress in order to function, because stress at the end of the day is just our body releasing cortisol and adrenaline to be focused and to be productive. But if we are exploiting that, and we are having chronic stress, and we are constantly on this high wave of cortisol and adrenaline, that's when it gets to us, and that's when it gets unhealthy. When we feel overwhelmed and exhausted and tired, and we feel like we are not performant anymore. But what do? Right? We push ourselves. We're not like, oh shit, like I feel like I can't focus right now. I'm going to just sit back and relax for an hour. It's, I need to keep going. I need to, there's so many, and I think maybe that's why in organizations like Google or these big tech giants, maybe that's why we see it more often. I don't know, but I think it has something to do with competition and with being surrounded by a lot of very inspiring and very smart people that are not talking about this topic. So everybody's just like, oh, but this person is
ambitious as well. Like the ego is here, so it's very hard.
Very ambitious. And I read an article once that I found very true. It was kind of relating to consulting companies, but I think you can very well put that on to, big tech giants as well. And they said they always hire the insecure overachievers. So there's maybe a lack of confidence in one way or another, and we all have that. We all have our own insecurities, right? But we always we are hired, it's like the best of the best, like we all had always the best grade, and we're like the top of our class, and then we come to tech companies and we're just one of a million or one of 1,000 people that are all very, very good, and that puts a lot of pressure on ourselves from the external side, but even more so from an internal perspective, right? Because we're an insecure overachiever. We want to overachieve. And now there's all these other people that are doing really well. So what do? I just push through it. I push through the pain. And I feel like we just haven't learned how to deal with stress. I really, really, really believe that there's no education around what stress is, what burnout is, where it comes from, how it happens. So people push, and then all of a sudden they fall off the bandwagon, And I really want to change that. That's my big mission. That's my really big mission, because I am always thinking, like, I see all these, like, new people that start new positions, and I'm like, they all don't know. The people that come to me at the moment are people that are already suffering burnout. They are the people that are already on antidepressants and on sleeping aid and on anti-anxiety medicine, and they know, obviously, because they have felt it.
Yeah, in their bones.
And they felt the pain. But I want to help people prevent that. This is really what it is about. And this is what my mission is. I want people to understand that they don't need to end up in burnout, or they don't need to end up in leaving a company because they're so overwhelmed and so stressed out that the only way out they see is to leave and to do something very different. And I think it's really important for employers and people and companies as well, right? To realize that if I'm just pushing and pressuring and, if I'm setting up these tools and performance evaluation cycles and all these different things, is that really healthy to keep my employees long term, or can I do something better that is more, retention based and more keeps in mind the employee?
Just briefly, because again, the audience being business owners, what do you think would be one thing that those large tech companies could do to kind of prevent this? What could have your previous job have done to prevent that Julia burned out and decided to change life?
I think education is one really important thing. We have a lot of mandatory trainings that we had to go through, like policy and unconscious bias training. I think burnout and mental health should be a mandatory training. Absolutely. That every employee needs to go through. You should
be the guest speaker every time.
I can't, split myself in 5 pieces, but I think there's definitely a scalable way of how to resolve that. I think people need to be educated, but I think there's also, looking at a couple of different structures and hierarchies that are persistent in companies like that. And the thing is that a lot of companies take Google as the best example, right? That Google has been on the top of the best employer list for many years. So people adapt that system. They think it's powerful, but they don't educate the people on disconnecting, that it's important to disconnect. I'm sure that Tiago, like we spent days in the office, like we spent late nights in the office, we spent weekends in the office, especially at the beginning in Dublin. Nobody told us that it's important to disconnect, and to
even if someone said it was not really like on top of priorities.
Exactly. I mean, there needs to be a right way of how to bring it across to make people see how urgent and important it is, right? So I think education is one thing, and then also structures is another thing. Like, how do I do performance evaluations? Do we really need to have them every 3 months or every 6 months? I think feedback and just going through those cycles put a ton of pressure and stress on people all the time. I talk with people all the time about it, and I think there's an interest in looking at that and seeing if what can be improved to keep people's well-being in mind.
Amazing, Julia. My dear Julia, it's becoming nighttime here, so we need to start wrapping up. I'm not in my usual set. I just have one small little light and it's dark because I'm in my parents' house today, but I had to do this interview with you, so apologies for that. But I still want to ask you, we're almost wrapping up. It's just this interesting questions that I love to make at the end. For example, in the past 5 years, other than the habits that you talked about, if you created a new habit that drastically improved your life, I know you ate healthily already for a long time, but any other thing that comes up to mind?
Yes. Morning routine was one thing that changed my life. I started with that last year when I was burned out. I had heard a lot about it before from other people and from other entrepreneurs and really successful people. And I was always like, I don't have time for that. And then I had a lot of time and I was like, okay, this is the time to set up a new routine. And what I do is I get up in the morning, I make my bed because, you should have those little things that make you feel accomplished right away in the morning. And then the big thing is that for the first hour in the morning, I don't look at my phone. I keep my energy to myself. And I think it's so important. So important. It's changed my life, really. So I get ready, I kind of go to the bathroom, go downstairs, have a warm glass of lemon water because we get very dehydrated overnight, which we don't realize. And then I sit down and I journal. I love writing. And for me, it's a very strong stress management.
Is it focused on what you've accomplished or what you goals or anything? different?
Anything that comes to my mind.
Okay.
If I have a challenge, if I have a good day, if I have a bad day, I'm just writing. I'm just writing what happened the day before, what kind of progress that I made in my business, and what challenged me. But I always write. I write as much as I want, and then at the end, I finish the day by writing down 3 things that I feel grateful for. So I'm doing gratitude practice to really remind myself of that there's always something positive, and I really challenge myself to always find something different as well. I don't want to just write down the same 3 things every day, or this 3 big things, like living in Tahoe and having an amazing partner, because that's really easy. But I really try to find the pleasure and the gratitude in the really small things, when it's raining outside, or when the really small things, when somebody had a really nice conversation with me, or something that made me really happy. And then once I've completed that, and sometimes it takes an hour, sometimes it takes 90 minutes, depending on how much I'm writing and if I'm taking a shower in the morning to get ready. But I don't look at my phone for that time. And
wow. Brave.
I really, really, that has changed me, really, because I feel like I'm starting the day and I'm grounded, and I'm, being
focused
with
on
myself,
yourself, not
focusing on myself.
Not with other people's priorities, just
yes,
you.
Exactly.
You
and not just giving out to the external world and answering all of these requests and emails, and which I obviously want to do, especially now as an entrepreneur. But I'm always like, they can also wait another hour. It's not going to matter that 1 hour, and that's really, really important. Yeah, beautiful. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, and we talked about previously that you had some influencers, mentors, gurus. Who do you still follow now online for inspiration on any area, entrepreneurship, mindset?
Yeah. I follow one person very adamantly. She's German. She's a German spiritual coach. And I've basically kind of seen and followed her grow her business over the last 3 years to a multi-million-dollar business.
Nice.
And that's been extremely inspiring to me, because she's very authentic and very passionate. And I like the way of how she has built her business is just absolutely beautiful for me. I'm happy her name is Laura Marlina Seiler. And really she's kind of a mindset spiritual coach as well. She helps people also build their businesses and things like that. And she is really my biggest inspiration. I have another few that I follow here and there, or that I, take maybe 1 or 2 things out that I think are really good that they do, but she is like the big one.
Your mentor.
She's like my virtual mentor. She doesn't know, but
maybe you should try to have her on your podcast. Did you try already? No, you didn't try yet.
No, I haven't. No.
Just do it. Send an email right now, or a LinkedIn message. LinkedIn works very well.
Yeah. In Germany, LinkedIn is not so big.
Yes, there's a version. I don't know, because LinkedIn is growing a lot recently in globally.
It is.
It's not just a CV, online CV thing. It's like content, pure content, and networking is really
for sure
working very well. Really,
it's one of the channels that has grown the most for me in the last 8 months. Yeah.
Okay, and if you had to choose a book on anything, marketing, entrepreneurship, mindset, which would you recommend?
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza.
Okay, I didn't hear about this.
It's all about mindset, and it's all about breaking the habit of being yourself, and about, we always think that we are just the way we are and we cannot change ourselves, all of the bad habits that we have.
Yes.
But he really goes on it from a very neuroscientific standpoint on how to change old thought patterns, old triggers. And he explains a lot around why there's so much stress in our life. He explains it really with neuroscience and with brain waves, and I love the book. It's literally changed my life.
Nice. Yeah. It's already
I have it back here on my little bookshelf.
It's right there. Really little. I love it. It's like the top books that you
exactly. It's just the top stress management books. Yeah.
I like how it's like in a pyramid. Nice.
Yeah, it's for it's my little YouTube video.
Cool background.
So
amazing, Julia, my dear. Thank you so much. It was brilliant. Absolutely fascinating. I think a lot of value from different perspectives: stress management, starting businesses. It's really, really going to add a lot of value for the Portuguese entrepreneur.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, and
And
entrepreneurs need stress
not only.
management too. And I think I think entrepreneurs are more aware of the mindset and the importance of the right mindset. So, everybody can use it. Everybody can, strengthen their mindset. And
And think about their employees as well. Think about their employees.
Yeah, and their employees. Yeah, everybody can need stress management.
So, Julia, how can people know more about you? Share all the socials, please.
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube under my name, Julia Arndt. And then on Instagram, it's my company name, so at Blue Mountain Mindfulness. And then my website is also www.bluemountainmindfulness.com. And just reach out to me if you have any questions, if you're interested to learn more. I'm posting new content, especially on YouTube. Every Monday, I'm posting a new podcast with video, and I'm posting new content every Friday, like a short 5 to 10 minute video about a stress management tool or a mindset strategy of how you can better manage stress and live an empowered life.
Brilliant. It was a pleasure, Julia. Thank you so much for this time.
Thank you so much for having me, Tiago.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bom, foi então o final do episódio 26 do podcast do Tiago. Eu já não fazia isto há algum tempo, então estava mesmo ansioso por estar de volta e agora vamos arrancar a série de novo. Deem mais convidados nas próximas semanas. Muito obrigado pelo seu tempo. Se gostou do vídeo, por favor, deixe o seu gosto, subscreva o canal. Faça todos os sociais, como eu pedi à Julia, para me ajudar aqui a promover o canal e poder alcançar mais empreendedores que precisem de ajuda em vários tópicos que cobrimos aqui no podcast. Muito obrigado pelo seu tempo e até à próxima.